The news of the past several weeks makes people wonder about the coronavirus and everything else going on in the world around us. Now, I'm not a very suspicious person all the time, but things seem to be moving at a very orchestrated rate on way too many fronts. What do you think?
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
I don't know about you, but some mornings I wake up and wonder, what has become of the world we once knew? Now, I know that over history there have been all kinds of issues and problems anywhere you can think of in this big world of ours. Nothing new about that. But it seems that in the last several years, especially in our country, the United States, we are seeing something happening here that we haven't really seen since the war between the states in the 1800s. People against people, a division the likes we have never seen. I hear a lot of people talking about, are we heading toward civil war? Well, sometimes I wonder. It all depends on how many freedoms are stolen by those that want to control our lives. And my biggest fear in the world today is that something is going to trigger something that's going to cause a lot of angst, hurt, and sorrow. And I truly worry for my nation, the United States. I have never seen two political parties so much at each other's throats. I've never seen such violent things stated in Facebook postings and Twitter commentary. When the president entered the hospital, how many were praying that he would die? That's the kind of moral issue that is going to destroy what's left of this nation. Then you have in the background those with a worldwide agenda that are trying to usher in a period of time of a world government, a world currency, and even a world religion. And so many people in church pews in the United States are totally blind to what is happening. They just believe that when the coronavirus goes away, everything will 100% return to normal. My honest fear in the depths of my heart is nothing will ever fully return to normal. Be prepared for some major changes coming your way and mine. One of my favorite guests on this program, who's going to be very much a regular in the near future, is the Reverend Dr. Timothy Gahles. He lives in New Jersey, a 9/11 survivor. He's been in ministry for many years, but had returned to Wall Street when all that happened, and that caused him to reassess his life, a lot of prayer, a lot of study, to understand the persecution and what the life was like in the early church. And his studies have taught him a lot of things. Timothy, welcome to the program again. Let me open with this question. When you look at the data regarding COVID-19, do you actually believe the things you're reading in the news today?
No, because there's not a consensus. If the numbers were based on fact and the numbers were reliable, then there would be a consensus on the numbers. But there is not. As a matter of fact, there's contradictions throughout. You have different numbers, different ways of measuring the numbers, different data resources for the numbers. And we're even getting articles and statements from the CDC, the World Health Organization themselves, who come out. One minute they're saying asymptomatic people are probably going to give off the virus. Other times they're saying there's no evidence for asymptomatic people giving off the virus. Then they're saying, we have all of these new cases, and at the same time, we're told that the tests aren't reliable, the PCR tests. They give off 50 to 80% false positives.
Well, matter of fact, really I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a couple of great articles, and of all places, the New York Times had a series of 3 articles talking about the fallacy of the PCR test and why the inventor of the test would permit the use we're trying to do with this test. What people don't understand, This test is not looking for active, and let's make something clear. A virus is not a living organism. Let me just say it again. A virus is not a living organism. It is some DNA strands wrapped literally in fat, which can confuse or fool a cell into allowing the entry of these DNA strands, which are not alive, into a cell, which then takes over that cell's operation to make more viruses. It's something, that's how every virus works. I don't care what type, but that's how they work. And so when I use the term live virus, it's not that they're living, but these are active. These are contained in their proper little fat module. These are good to go viruses. All a PCR test is doing is finding fragments of the DNA strands that are from cells that are now, from these virus particles that are broken. In other words, they're open. The shell is gone. And we may get one of the three strands in one piece and two in another and one over here. We're getting all these fragments. And what this PCR test does, it amplifies and makes more of the same thing in a replication. And they do this like 1 time, 10 times, 20 times. The problem today, even the inventor said, anytime you get past a magnification of 24 times, recycling this stuff, then your data is just worthless. I mean, it means nothing. You're going to get false.
Adding to the fact that you're not even getting just a COVID-19 strand.
Exactly. You don't know what you're getting. You're starting to pick up all kind of stuff. Exactly. And, certain people that may have recovered on their own, that were asymptomatic, may have viral fragments that their body is shedding. And you're not going to spread that because these are no longer active viruses. They're broken. They can't infect anybody or anything. Yet that's becoming...
So if you have a regular nose cold, a regular nose cold, that is a COVID virus. That
it sure is. Positive. It sure is. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so these tests they're amplifying in some labs 37 to 40 times. Not the maximum 24. And all of a sudden, with these tests, the way they've been modified over the summertime, what we're beginning to see, honestly, we're seeing a pandemic of cases or an epidemic of cases in the United States. But the number of people going to the hospital and the number of people that are dying, well, those numbers are simply not tracking. When you look at the number of people that are supposedly have died in the United States, okay? We have, as of now, about 215,000. We'll just round it off by the time we're on the air here. We record these programs a day or two in advance, so I'm just going to allow a worst-case scenario. So here's what I'm thinking. That means, on average, since the beginning of people getting infected and sick in this country, which started in March, and you saw that, the numbers tracking up, getting sick, going to the hospital, and in April, May, then it simmered down, then kind of spiked back up in cases. We should be losing about 27,000 people per month, okay?
Right.
At that rate, 27 to 30,000 people a month. Well, I'm thinking we just barely crossed 200,000, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember when. And so these numbers that are going up much slower. We also still are not 100% sure if we want to go with these numbers. That the CDC says that only about 6% died of COVID and 94% died with COVID, and on average 2.6 other comorbidities. In many of those cases, they made it clear that those other issues could have easily, within a similar time frame, taken out that particular individual. We also know a lot of flu deaths after April the 4th of this year because we stopped officially, according to the CDC, on April 4th. We no longer counted any more flu deaths in the United States, and they suddenly became COVID deaths. I don't care what anybody says. The number, the flu number was still there, and it just went to a drop to zero, and suddenly the COVID picked up at the same point. And so we know some of these deaths are not what we think they are.
And doctors were given instructions even that if they assumed a death might have been from COVID to record it as COVID.
Yes.
You know, my question is, when have we ever heard such things coming out of the medical establishment, defining the death of an individual in such flippant ways? And
Never.
Again, I will say the old Roman
I will tell you when. I will tell you on April the 4th of 2020 is when it all happened, because the same day that the CDC on their website announced that we're no longer counting flu deaths, they also, at the same time, because I read it. I mean, it's not that I got this from a friend of a friend who heard it from another friend and then found it on the internet. I was working in emergency management. Guess where I was going to these pages as part of my job. Okay, now we're not counting flu deaths. But, okay, here are the new protocols for counting COVID-19 deaths and how they're coded and how they're assumed. And it artificially drove the numbers up enormously, and I think it still does. It really, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that if there's any way that COVID can be listed, is pretty much if you think about it and you read it, if there's any way for COVID to be listed as the cause of death, then you do it. I mean, well,
absolutely. And why are the big tech companies playing into it? In other words, as I said once before, if I type in any 3-digit number with the phrase new cases into Google, it will generate some article somewhere saying that many new cases have just appeared. Now, this is any number.
All right, so let's have fun with that. I'm gonna go 7023.
2-3 digits, it's easier because they're going to generate more articles with 3 digits, but you can do more.
Results. I typed in some new cases, and I'm trying to reach new cases reach 7,023 mark. There it is. So I used a big number. So I'm gonna go down and just take a number like, I don't know. Let's call 666 new cases.
Yep.
And bam, Virginia 3, 666 new cases in Virginia, 666 new cases in Florida, 666 new cases in Oklahoma, Kuwait registers 666 new cases, 666 new coronavirus cases now reported in Virginia. Another one for this, and it's this guy, yeah. You'll keep finding whatever day, hour, or second that'll match that number. And then I typed in let me type in another one here. Just for, I'm going to think, just make up a number. Okay, I typed in a big number just to see what would happen. There have been at least 18,000 new confirmed cases of COVID a day. I typed in 18,000. All right. Yeah. So you're right. I'm right here in front of a computer, and I just typed it in, and so everything is rigged at Google and other places to always find the word cases attached to COVID. Notice it's not new cases of the flu. It's not new cases of hepatitis C. It's not new cases of anything but corona.
That's right. So again, cui bono, who benefits? What is going on, and why are the tests so unreliable? Why is the media on the same page with pumping this thing up? Where are the investigative journalists who should be exposing all of this?
They are not.
Why?
They're part of it. They are basically, as the communists of old said in the Soviet Union, the media are useful, well-paid idiots. That's it. That's what they are.
And anybody who disagrees with their narrative and exposes this while you're a conspiracy theorist or you're a far right-wing religious fanatic or some of those terms, so they demonize the opposition, which is
absolutely
classic. Even though you're exposing, I think it was Orwell who said truth in times of deception is a very revolutionary thing.
Yes.
If you speak truth, you're going to be hated for it. Jesus said the same thing, didn't he? If they hated me, they're going to hate you also.
It goes back to something we've talked about a number of times as we've worked this program together since its beginning. There is, in my mind, that there is something evil about the way this pandemic has been used. I mean, we've never used the flu like this that I can remember. There was genuine concern within the emergency management communities when you have an H1N1 and what have you. But you never saw the federal government going so overboard in trying to find ways of testing for H1N1. Yeah, of course, everybody was pushing the vaccine stuff that, get your flu shot early because it could be a bad year. But here we are, and we're trying to rush a vaccine to market. And you have all these, major billion-dollar companies all doing the same thing. They are essentially, trying to fight their way to the top to be the winner of the virus sweepstakes, and that's what it boils down to. I predict there'll be more than one winner that'll come out, and for whatever reason, the pharmaceutical companies will help themselves to the buffet table of taxpayer money to get these vaccines out. That's my opinion. And they will want everybody and their kid brother and far-lost cousin to take it. And if you don't, that's my fear. What happens to those that don't take it?
Here's the other thing I want to ask. Why is it that not only America, but even Britain now are saying if and when the vaccine comes out, they're going to use their military to distribute? Now, let me ask you a question. Why would we need to do that with the virus, even what we see right now? Why?
You think that Amazon.com could do a better job in the military in distributing the vaccine because they can find my house in Georgia. I mean, come on.
They seem to be able to get the flu vaccine everywhere pretty quick. So why are we going to have military roll it out? That worries me. I don't know about you.
It does. I mean, when I heard that, I'm going, whose idea was this? I don't follow it. I just don't follow why anybody would want to do this. It just doesn't make any sense.
So I use the military to roll out a vaccine, but at the same time, I say it's not going to be mandatory. Does that make sense?
No.
Not at all. I'm using fear with the military, but then I'm going to tell everybody, but you can make a choice. Yeah, you're going to do that when soldiers are coming to your door saying, we have the vaccine. You understand what I'm saying? Something is amiss here, and with the numbers, the cases, the effectivity of the PCR test, the way they want to roll it out, with the big tech companies, the media in line, again, what's going on? Who's benefiting from this? We might say big pharma. Yeah. We might say the big, and of course they have their hands in everything, but who's behind them?
The Chinese. Think about it. Where do you think a lot of our people keep forgetting? We discovered earlier this year that about 90% of the most important components for our prescription drugs are not made in the United States or Canada or a friendly country. They're made in China. I mean,
that was a revelation.
Yeah, that was a scary revelation. And if you tick us off, we'll cut you off. Was kind of the attitude. What we can take it away. It's like, whoa.
How could we put ourselves in a position like that to be that dependent on China?
We've been doing since. I'm going to get somebody mad here, and I don't want to talk politics. By the way, before I say what I'm going to say, you're listening to Truth to Ponder. I'm your host, Bob Bierman. The Reverend Dr. Timothy Gahles, my guest for the hour, and I really enjoy the insight and the conversations. I hope you do too. We're not trying to. We're trying to expose, trying to dig a little bit deeper than the headlines, because I just believe that most journalism today, if it's not biased, it's sloppy. I mean, it is just plain sloppy. The courses that I took at St. John's University in 1973 and 4, if I was as sloppy as today's journalist, I would fail the course. Literally, a disrespectful press corps that asks stupid, tainted political questions for an agenda, trying to invoke a answer that will fit their narrative is not journalistic. The facts are not with them. The truth does not lie in NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. New York Times, none of it. They have sold their souls to an agenda, and they want to be part of the worldwide elite. And so you got to be careful. I even doubt a lot of what I'm getting lately on Fox News. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I don't, outside of a few people, I'm becoming less trustworthy as the days go by. So if this program means something, check out our website, truth2ponder.com. Truth2ponder.com. And we'd like to hear from you. Send an email. I'll give you the mailing address when we come back in a little while. When we take our break at the bottom of the hour and come back, I'll give you the mailing address. But right now, you can go to our webpage, truth2ponder.com. Well, I'm just thinking here of a few things, that why I don't trust a lot of what I'm being told. This kind of goes back to the fear narrative. And I was thinking a few minutes ago, this virus, a lot of people were becoming, what's the word I want to use, lackadaisical about it. And now suddenly the President of the United States is one of its patients. And I'm sure that has changed the thinking that if he can get it, then I guess anybody can get it. And I wonder, am I being a conspiracy theory to ask, how did he get it? With all the protocols are in place to protect the president. And number one, if you're saying, well, if he'd only worn a face mask, no. Any doctor will tell you since 1981, study after study after study has been done to prove that a face mask is worthless in protecting the individual wearing it from getting a virus. And if everybody around him is wearing one, which they are for the most part, and everybody's tested literally every day, then how did he get it? Now, we were talking before about who benefits. You always talk about that. Mm-hmm. Since 1988, beginning in 1989, and I don't care what you think, but I am convinced as I look back over time, since 1989, every president up until this one in the United States has gradually, one little piece at a time, sold off a part of our industry, our technology, and what we are as a nation to the highest bidder. And that oftentimes has been China. And would you agree with that premise?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, from NAFTA to the Pacific Trade Partner deal to all these things that have sold us out. And so we make these deals and the automotive industry gets ruined. We make these deals and our own ability to have energy is now dependent upon foreign nations. Our own ability to make prescription drugs is now in the hands of the Chinese. And the list goes on and on and on. And it didn't happen in one day. It happened over 30 years. And finally we realized that, we wonder why we have a Rust Belt. I mean, come on. We know why we have one. Those industries are offshore now. And we are now just I think the New World Order is getting their wish. They're trying to weaken the power and influence of the United States.
Yes.
And they were succeeding. They were succeeding. Yep. And I believe that since this new president came on board, he slowed them down, and they don't like their plans being changed. And that's why we have the kind of contentious election we're going to have. That's why there'll be so much cheating. Katie bar the door. It's going to happen. I don't think we'll have a winner anytime immediately after the election. Whatever winner is there, don't be guaranteed he's the winner. If it's Trump. If it's not, if it's not Biden, well, they're going to question it and keep finding ballots in trunks of cars. And we're already getting the news stories how they find missing ballots, and already. And so that opens up the door. We can find many a missing ballot after the election that somebody didn't like Biden, and they threw all of his ballots, into the Hudson River, and they were floating downstream, and a fishing boat caught it somewhere off the shores of Virginia. This is the kind of stuff we're going to see.
Right. You're also seeing. You talked about China, right? You talked about why China has been allowed to do so much, and it's not and I use that term purposely, been allowed to do this. David Rockefeller, in his autobiography or his memoirs, he wrote. He even spoke in there of his great admiration for China, for their ability for a top-down control of a capitalist communist system in a way that he calls it. And he said that is a beautiful prototype for the world government that we're looking to establish for the good of humanity.
So how many millions of people had to die in China to make that wonderful dream come true?
Absolutely.
I mean, millions, hundreds of millions of dead bodies are stacked up just to get that to occur. Literally.
Yeah, and more will be. The thing is here, okay, he opened the doors for trade. He opened the doors to build the infrastructure of China, to fund it, to do everything he could to allow them to prosper. And then eventually what the desire was, in conjunction with big corporations and big pharma, is to bring everybody together, to kind of meld China into the world and to have a world government based on the China model.
Yes.
And that's what we see happening right now. And long story short, that's it. That's what we're looking at. So what do we do? What is the agenda behind all these lies? It's not just the bigger picture of kind of a world order. It's a world currency. It's multifaceted. It's with the world vaccination, world track and trace, and a world currency. And they're putting all of those things into place in one system. They've got multiple things out there, whether it's, as we've spoke before, ID 2020, you got the Agenda 21, Agenda 30, you've got all of these different things out there, Trust Stamp, Tento Health. They're all combining with Quantum Dot to put one system, and that system will have all of your information, everything, including your digital currency and biometric ID, all in one thing. And it's not going to be like I heard somebody say to me the other day, do you think, the COVID vaccine is the mark of the beast? And I said, no. I think Quantum Dot has a good likelihood of being that. I think the COVID vaccine is going to have its own purported use in conjunction with all of the other things that are coming together. And we can go into that at some point because there's a lot there that is documented. And remember, anything I'm telling you here, I'm documenting. I'm not just speaking off the top of my head like some prophecy or conspiracy guy.
There are plenty of them out there.
I read it.
Look, I've heard, once again, and this is one of the reasons that I just felt very strongly. By the way, we got a break coming up here in a second, but this is one of the reasons I felt very strongly to, for at least a season, launch this particular radio program, Truth to Ponder. Now, currently, we are airing this program on international shortwave. There are a couple of domestic stations that are picking it up as well, hopefully maybe some more. And I'm just torn right now, and this is where I need my listeners to kind of give me some guidance. How are you listening to this program? Are you listening online? Are you listening as a podcast from the website? Are you listening on shortwave? By the way, shortwave time is not free, and I have been paying for this time out of my own pocket and also from a gift that was given to me to help launch the program. I do not pay myself for my time and the work and the equipment. In fact, to make our program easier in the future, I went out and I've ordered a good microphone and headphone set for Dr. Timothy Gahles here to be on the program with me, so it's not the telephone effect. It should make life a lot easier for both of us in doing the show. And there's some others that I'd like to see that happen with as well. Would you consider maybe even supporting this ministry to help defray the airtime cost? I don't need to make any money out of it. It was never my intent. My intent was simply to know that we're good for several months, and we are going forward. I've got all that covered well past the election, probably into the past Thanksgiving. But any help beyond that would be much appreciated if you'd consider it. You can find out how to do that from the website truth2ponder.com, truth2ponder.com. Mailing address in Georgia is simply, you can do Truth to Ponder. You can leave the 2 in or use a regular word 2 and use 21 Berkshire Lane, and then add the number 263. That's our box system up here in our little community. 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263 in Sky Valley, Georgia. The zip code 30537. That is Truth to Ponder. And that is 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263, Sky Valley, Georgia, 30537. Had a couple of nice letters this past week. Somebody asking some questions, and I'm going to write her back. She lives in South Carolina, and she wonders if she's heard my voice before on radio. And depending upon what you've listened to, she hears me on a radio station in Abbeville, I believe, because when she described the time, there's a radio station, WZLA, an FM in Abbeville, that carries this program, the weekend edition of it, on Sundays from noon to 1. And so I'm glad that she took the time to write. She was from upstate New York like I am. If she heard me on radio in upstate New York, it would have been 40-some-odd years ago out of a little radio station near Rochester. But I have spent a lot of time on radio in the Carolinas. I was on a radio station in Anderson for a while doing a talk show. But for many, many years, I worked for the broadcast ministry of Toccoa Falls College, which would be radio station WRAF and WEPC, which was licensed in a town called Belton, South Carolina. So she may have heard me there. And other letters as well. I'm going to take maybe a day and go through a few of these letters and share your thoughts about the program. We will be right back right after this.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman. This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
And welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Truth to Ponder. I'm your host, Bob Bierman. So glad that you're taking time to listen to this program today. As I told you as we went into the break, this is a program, a labor of love on my part, but something that I feel very called to do. If you've listened for any length of time since I started this program, and even over the past 5.5 years with your weekend show, my goal has always been to share information, but also the good news and hope of the gospel. We are coming into a time, and you can say it isn't so, but it is, where Christians are going to be gradually pushed into their own little ghettos. And call it the mark of the beast, that's coming. All of these things are coming, but this prelude, this time before, God is putting together his remnant church. I have no doubt in my mind about that. We discovered during the coronavirus epidemic how many cultural Christians we actually have. Many that will never come back to church when this is all allegedly said and done. And many that have fear that needs to be healed. And so we have a lot of work to do in front of us in the days and months ahead. Right now, many churches during the pandemic took advantage of using platforms like YouTube and Facebook Live and other avenues of social media to connect to their church. I mean, how many churches had one or two people at the building and they streamed a service to everybody else? Well, that's good, but it's also bad because we're told to assemble ourselves together in the Scripture. And the problem with using social media, it disconnects the church. It disconnects our corporate worship. It disconnects our giving praise together unto God. And if you are a sacramentalist like I am, it denies you of those means of grace. It also denies you of singing. It's funny, in California, singing in a church is illegal, but screaming at a protest is legal. Doesn't make any sense, does it? We see that in many of the blue states in the United States, the church being singled out more than any other group. You can fly in an airliner with a little paper diaper on your face, and allegedly that's fine. No one's going to get sick and die. But if you sing in a church, everybody's going to die. That's the attitude that's been put out there. So we're trying to find a way to develop some additional online resources that are independent of the tech tyrants. And that can't be done. And I'll be talking this week with some other like-minded people to develop these platforms so we can have a place we can go and literally hide in plain sight. Last week, if you listened to Father John Peck, I had him on the program, and he had it right. We're going to be building our own little communities and be very self-sufficient in many ways. And let's not be so dependent upon the tyrants that want to run and rule our lives. Our guest on the program today is the Reverend Dr. Timothy Gahles, and I welcome you back. And we were talking about one of the things that's going to happen. It's going to have to happen, and this is going to be the prelude, I think, also part of the setup for a beast system. It's going to be a one world, and it's going to be a digital currency. Would you agree with that premise?
Oh, absolutely. They've been working on that for a while, but I believe that's what Klaus Schwab and the Davos Institute termed the Great Reset. The Great Reset, using this COVID-19, this virus, as the impetus for it. If you look up Libra.org,
yes,
Libra.org. Libra is the new global payment system that they're going to put into place.
Right.
It's going to be remember, this is part of, I guess, what we would call the beast system, right? Because it's a system of the global government, period. And Libra system is meant to catch everybody into their payment grid, combined with what we would traditionally call MasterCard and other groups. And the World Economic Forum is helping to implement this. So the Libra payment system is global. It will be combined with the track and tracing system. All of these things, isn't it interesting that with the COVID-19, everything is becoming global now.
Yes.
Everything from not only healthcare, but vaccines and our payment and our money and banking, and everything has become global. You know something, Bob? It's almost as if this was already done, waiting to go.
It was, in my opinion. I think, listen, I don't care what anybody, you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, go right ahead. But when you go back to after President Trump was elected, it was Dr. Anthony Fauci said that this president will deal with an unprecedented worldwide pandemic, and it was going to happen. Well, how did he know it was going to happen? I mean, he acted so surprised when it did, but he was already predicting. Why in 2019 was there the event, 101 or
Event 201?
201. And, that was going to mimic exactly what we went through beginning in end of February. They had done a global tabletop emergency management type exercise on how to respond to a worldwide virus or pandemic that was killing millions of people. And how do you contain that? What things do you do to keep life survivable? Well, number one, you go to a global currency system and you have people's goods and services delivered to their door to keep them alive. It's like my guest said last week, as long as they have their TV and their internet and all their supplies are being dropped off at the door, everybody should be happy and content in that kind of a life. But the truth is, that goes against the human spirit. We're not designed to be like, circus animals in a cage, which is exactly what this is doing. And I think the health and life toll from being locked down will probably exceed the deaths of the actual coronavirus here in the United States. What do you think?
And there are other things combined with that. I mean, Event 201 was done in October of 2019. But if you look up the Rockefeller Foundation document called Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, this is a 2010 paper. In this paper, they ran through the pandemic exercise way prior to Event 201. And in this exercise, they talked about Lockstep, which is a program they would introduce by locking and quarantining the world, locking them down, and then implementing a top-down authoritarianism slowly, progressively in the nations over the next 10 years. And they said by 2030, they would like to see a world government established, an authoritarian world government, a complete control grid. And the interesting thing about that, okay, is that there is a program at the United Nations called Agenda 2030. 10 years from now. And we also have Agenda 21. All of these papers are talking about sustainable development, a world economic system, even a world religion, to be honest with you. All of these things are going to come together. So you have it starting on 2020. They have a program called ID 2020, which is going to give us an ID to travel around the world. And it started this year. And now you're going to see it go for the next 10 years, but get incrementally worse. And it's outlined in this 2010 PDF you can get offline by doing by typing in what I told you. But here's something going back to what you and I said before, Bob. We talked about this military rolling out the tests. On September 28th, Tobias Ellwood, who's a Tory MP in England, he told Parliament, he suggested that the British Army and the Ministry of Defense should be in charge of distributing and administering millions of doses of the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, as well as issuing, vaccination certificates, which will allow travel. Think about that. If you don't have it, the military will roll this out, and we've discussed it in this country, and others will follow suit. The military is going to not just roll out vaccines, but my view is they're going to also be used at checkpoints to see if you have a travel certificate, a vaccination certificate, all the things. Remember, we used to have that joke years ago in America, show me your papers, please. We never wanted to get to that point. Well, guess where we're going?
We're going to that point.
Getting to that point. You betcha. And this is just, it's coming out from different directions, right? So look at the free world. This is what I do. I look at England. I look at Australia. I look at New Zealand. I look at the free world countries, Canada. What are they doing? And in some cases, they're more tyrannical than the non-free world right now. I'm kind of flabbergasted by what I see. But what's the bigger picture? And that, I think, is what you and I have been touching on in these shows. And people have responded saying they've been able to connect the dots because of what you and I have been revealing to them.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where does it go?
All right, here's the way I think. This is my feeling. We are in a process, and I was thinking when you were talking, many people know that I spent a lot of years in radio broadcasting and also went into ministry later in life. But there was a little period of time after I lost my first wife that I stepped away from being in active ministry. It just was not an easy thing to do. And I worked a little bit in communications, and I picked up a strange little job in working for a county's emergency management division as a public information officer. I also started to cross-train in planning and preparation for disasters like, tornadoes and floods and what have you, and started taking courses in emergency management, which I could do through the state in which I was living at the time. And then I became a member of the International Association of Emergency Managers, IAEM. And I'm still on their mailing list, and I still get their newsletters and everything else. I still got the golf shirt with the emblem and everything else. But when I was doing this work a number of years ago, I did it for about 5.5, 6 years. I had when I would go to their international meetings, went to one in Orlando, one in San Antonio. I traveled for those meetings. I had a very creepy feeling the entire time that I was there. I couldn't put my finger on it. This is not just emergency managers in the United States. This is not just the merchandisers, selling things to you. But you're dealing with emergency management from all over the world, including China. China was there. You name it, any country in the world, the EU, they were there. And they talked about a global response. We're talking, this is 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're talking about how we're going to have global responses to these man-made disasters. Now, notice the new term had become man-made, no longer terrorist. These would be man-made disasters. And they even then would say, which could include, not just explosive devices, but pandemics. Now, this is 2009. Do you think they were prepping the emergency management community in how we're going to have this uniform worldwide response?
Right. Well, exactly. And why with this particular disease, when we're talking about the numbers, okay, being what they are? Mm-hmm. I mean, tuberculosis kills 1.5 million at least a year worldwide. Way more, 10 times what COVID has already killed. Mm-hmm. So my question is this: why didn't we deploy military for that?
Right.
Why is it that different countries are even considering that? You know why, in my view? Because ultimately you need to have an excuse to get military on the streets everywhere. And if it's a benevolent thing for health care and they can administer tests and help us out, sounds wonderful.
Right.
But mark my words, once they're there, they're never coming off the street.
That's right.
And they're progressively themselves going to get more authoritarian. And guess what? You're not going to really need the police anymore, are you? You're going to have a world police force eventually, which will be a military force.
It'll have to be. I mean, you're so right. I mean, we are being prepped for something we've never seen before in our world in our lifetime. Things that you and I would both, especially me at my age, and I thought the biggest threat to my life in the 1960s when I was in elementary school, 50s and 60s, was going to be the Soviet Union, sending a missile to blow up New York and Washington.
Right.
But it really wasn't. It was not going to be that kind of warfare. And I think by the 1970s, most of us kind of understood that. By the time I'm in college, we're recognizing the concept of mutually assured destruction. That, which country is going to launch an ICBM against the other? Because both countries will end up not existing afterward. I mean, it's going to be the response, whatever it may be, is going to be lethal to both sides and be nothing left. It's like a radio drama from the 1950s, the world after tomorrow. I mean, after it's been destroyed. And so we knew that the mutually assured destruction was going to take away our ability for the normal kind of warfare. We're not going to be coming out there in most places with tanks and guns and airplanes against a major power. It's not going to happen. It'll be something different. And so the only way to resolve this in the world is to have a one world system, and that's where we're heading.
And they'll, of course, describe it. It's always described as both beneficial. It's described as being, for your safety, which is a classic tyrant use of the term. And people fall for it over and over again because they think of the basic goodness of man, right? And I've been told this for years. People say, well, people are basically good. And I sit there and I ask them a question. I say, well, do you have a car alarm? And they say, well, yeah. And I say, okay, do you lock your front door at night when you go to bed? And they say, yeah. I say, well, when you go to bank, is there like a 2-inch piece of plexiglass between you and the teller? I said, is that because of the one or two bad people out there? No. Ultimately, if I took all law away from your state tomorrow for 5 days, would I see the natural goodness of man blossom? Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't. I'd see an absolute crazy riot like we're seeing now. That's called lawlessness. Mm-hmm. And people are basically good. We have good in us and we have evil in us.
Yes.
But the reason God gave us laws, okay, is to pull back against the evil, the bad, and to conceptualize upon the good, and to get us to learn to do the right thing and the good thing.
Exactly.
And so that's the world we created, that Christ created through us and through the church, especially in the West. We're losing that. And as we kick God out of society, we're also kicking law out of the society. And that's why the man of sin, or what we would call the Antichrist, is known as the man of lawlessness. The man of lawlessness.
Yes.
Because laws are going to go to the wayside, and he's going to create new ones. Just arbitrary laws based off of whatever, however we feel. These are the things we're seeing now, and that's chaos. Absolute chaos. And so that's why we're seeing all of this occur. And he's going to allow lawlessness, I believe, worldwide to get to such a point. People are going to cry out for order.
Exactly.
And lo and behold, somebody's going to step on the scene and clean this mess up, and they're going to love him.
You know, when we're going to have to come back and do this again this week, because I've got a couple of other themes that you just opened the door to. When you talk about when the Antichrist shows up, and we can discuss theology some other time. There are a lot of people that don't worry about it because they are believing in a pre-tribulation rapture, so it doesn't apply to me. I'm out of here before it gets bad anyway. And my only issue is I remind everybody, up until the 1800s, nobody in the church ever believed that. That was never taught by anybody, anywhere, at any time, under any circumstance. In 1900 or 1800 years of writings and teachings and doctrine, nowhere did the church ever believe in a pre-tribulation rapture until Darby came along and popped that concept out. And people are just looking at it as, well, with that, I don't have to be prepared. Would you agree with what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I would agree. Margaret MacDonald popularized it when she went to one of the meetings with Darby. It's been popularized, but it is not historically in the church. And even if, let's hypothetically say it were, my only question to you is, well, if it's not true, you better be ready.
That's exactly right.
If it is true, that you don't have to worry about it. But if it's not true, you better be ready. And it didn't come true for the Christians in China or the Christians in Russia or the Christians in other places around the world. They were martyred, sent to gulags. I mean, be ready and be ready. That's watch, as Jesus said.
My guest on the program today, the Reverend Dr. Timothy Gahles, who lives in New Jersey. As I've told you before, if you've listened to the program and you've heard him as a guest, he's a 9/11 survivor in New York. He'd at one time worked on Wall Street, entered the ministry, and then ended up back on Wall Street, at least to help support his family. And he was there on that day in 2001. It changed his life immensely. And he began to do a lot of study and research about the world in which we live. He studied the martyrs of the faith, those that died because of their belief, and how we as Christians should really act. Today we have too many people that I call cultural Christians. They go to the baptisms, the weddings, the funerals, but they really don't participate in the life of the church, except when it's convenient. That is what's called a cultural Christian. We have many of those in the United States today. Then we have those that belong to churches that, well, they're all about social justice and things that just feel good. And they worry me equally as much as any other group out there. The purpose of this radio program, Truth to Ponder, is to give you information, things you may not be hearing everywhere else, but I can assure you that there's nothing being made up. There's nothing coming off any oddball website where somebody makes stuff up. I dig a little deeper, and so do my guest. And that's why we do this program, to make sure you're not just being fed one side of a story. It helps if you know both. This ministry on my part is a labor of love. Airtime is not free for the shortwave. And thanks to a generous gift to get things started, we're here. And over the next several weeks, I need to make some decisions about whether to stay on shortwave or not, or cut back. It is important to know. This radio show takes a lot of time to produce and distribute, and I'm doing it all. I have no staff. And so I'm looking to you to pray for me and give me your thoughts. you can use the website, which is truth2ponder.com. Truth2ponder.com. If you're able to make a small gift to the ministry, you can do that from the website very easily using PayPal. If you'd like the mailing address, it's very simple. You can mail it to 21 Berkshire Lane. That's 21 Berkshire, Berkshire Lane, and add the number 263. That's our special box number here in our community. So that's 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263, in Sky Valley, Georgia, and the zip code 30537. That zip code again, 30537. One more time, 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263, Sky Valley, Georgia, zip code 30537. Let me know what you think of the program, because I need to make some decisions about how to develop platforms and things we're going to be needing in the future. And if this is one we should be using, fine, we'll use it. If not, well, we'll look and keep praying for whatever place that God would have us to go. Hopefully, maybe this Thursday, I hope to bring back Dr. Timothy Gahles as we continue our discussion. Until then, this is Bob Bierman thanking you for listening to Truth to Ponder.
This has been Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman. To find out more, visit our website, truth2ponder.com. That's truth2ponder.com. Truth to Ponder, shining the light of truth in a darkening world.